Can I get two? Oh, and guac.
At Amplify, we've eliminated all banking fees, so you can enjoy more of life's extras. No fees equals more guac. Amplify.
You know, I think that's a complicated discussion because I think that there's both a good side and a bad side to social media. I think, on the good side, I think it's an amazing space for people to find their communities. I think the negative side, though, is that there can be a lot of pressure for all of us in what we see on social media. And a lot of what we see isn't even necessarily real, but it nevertheless has a very real impact on us psychologically. And I think that can be challenging.
Hi, I'm Mindy Hoffman, and welcome to the Women of Austin podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Dr. Aisha White. Aisha, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Mindy.
So something people might not know is that you were on the very first ever episode of the Women of Austin podcast, but it never aired. So I'm so happy to have you back here and get some one-on-one time. This is amazing.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here with you.
So I wanted to start by asking you something that people would be surprised to know about you.
I'm an avid baker. I think a lot of people don't realize that. I baked a lot during the pandemic. Often I don't have time to bake as much as I'd like, but I'm a big baker. I think if I wasn't a plastic surgeon, I think I'd probably be a pastry chef.
No way.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Okay.
Absolutely.
I got to try something.
I'm happy to bake for you.
Oh my gosh. So I wanted to talk to you and have you on and talk about beauty and just the fact that you're a plastic surgeon and you can have real conversations about beauty stands out to me. Not that others can't. It's just there's something about the way that you talk about your work and your the way that you describe things just always really resonates with me. And so I wanted to share that with our audience. So let's see, we've talked a lot about the pressures of social media on children, and I know that, and women, and I know that, we've talked a little bit about that, but how are you feeling about social media and what it's doing for people with their body image issues and self-esteem? I just love to hear you. Let me know what you got.
Yeah. I think that's a complicated discussion because I think that there's both a good side and a bad side to social media. I think, on the good side, I think it's an amazing space for people to find their communities, find people who have similarities with them, find people who have similar challenges with them. And I think that can be really positive, that can be really supportive. I think the negative side, though, is that there can be a lot of pressure for all of us in what we see on social media. And a lot of what we see isn't even necessarily real, but it nevertheless has a very real impact on us psychologically. And I think that can be challenging.
Do you have people coming in ever and asking you for things that aren't realistic because it's something that they've seen?
All the time. I think, there are filters now. So I think, beauty, this is a very interesting time for beauty because I think that more than ever, there are some very unrealistic standards being created from, apps or AI or, a lot of these tools that young women and, even older women have to sort of morph their appearance and create something that may not actually be like realistic for a human being.
Yeah. I know that now on Instagram, at least, if you have a filter on, you have to let everybody know that it's a filter.
Oh, wow.
And I think that that's an improvement. But that I also know of apps that you can use that will put that filter on, and then you can upload the video So you don't have the filter. So it's hard. It is hard to know what's real and what's not. But I have my daughter, she's 9, and she was playing with my phone, and I let her like play around in Snapchat, and then what she went to was like the duck lips and the full makeup and and it was scary for me to see her. First of all, she looks so grown up, and that's my baby, but like to see that that's like what she's seeing already and wanted to play with.
No, I mean, I think I hear this a lot from moms, and I hear sort of multiple versions of this conversation from moms. So I think moms are concerned about their daughters growing up too soon. I think there's also this sense of, whether it's the filters or the plastic surgery, if you're allowing this, are you also creating an environment where you're telling, your child, he or she isn't enough, and that, these changes are necessary. I also see a lot of women struggling with this, with their own decisions to make changes with their body, and whether, they're kind of betraying these values that they're trying to instill in their daughters.
Oh, wait, tell me more.
So
I forgot. Yeah, we've talked about this briefly.
We've talked about this a lot. I think so. Again, I think that plastic surgery is a decision that someone should give a lot of thought before just jumping into. But it's always very interesting to me, and we talked about this, how society views different body changes differently. So like we would never judge someone for getting braces to straighten their teeth, or, whitening their teeth, or having dental implants if they lost a tooth. But if someone has Botox or breast implants, there are lots of people who can be really judgmental about those choices that person has made, for his or her body. And it's just interesting to me. They're both changes. I mean, obviously surgery is more invasive, but I could argue that Botox or fillers are, less invasive than some of the dental procedures, but I think that they're perceived very differently. And I think for moms, when you're trying to encourage your kids, particularly teens, when they're going through puberty and all those changes, and you're trying to say, oh, well, you're beautiful, and, I want you to accept yourself for who you are, it can seem very contradictory to then make a decision to make a change in your body when you're trying to instill these values of self-acceptance into your child.
Yeah, that's tough. And so you have these conversations with your patients and help them try to navigate it and try to help them figure out what's best for them and their family.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, like everything else, it's a balance. I think that, just because you have plastic surgery or make any sort of change to your body, it doesn't mean that you hate yourself. I think that sometimes making a change, particularly in something that's always bothered you, can be extremely empowering. But also, I think that there's a balance. I think that some people are making a lot of changes, and they're trying to correct something that maybe really is more of an issue within. There's some young women who may receive pressure from mom, even for something that, wouldn't be a procedure that people would be as judgmental about. So, for example, breast reduction. I think there are lots of young women who have very large breasts who would absolutely benefit from a breast reduction for relief of back pain, for finding clothes that fit better, for not being teased at school. But I think sometimes maybe they're not ready to make that leap yet. And so they get, brought into the office by very well-intentioned moms who are like, this will solve your problem. This will change your life. This is a great opportunity for a lesson about having control over your body.
Women of Austin would like to thank our community sponsors. Joel Richardson and Team, your Austin mortgage lender. Visit myfinanceteam.com. Dave's Ultimate Automotive. Visit davesultimateautomotive.com and become a part of the Dave's family today. Elite Marquee and Events, LED marquees, rentals, and event planning at Elite Marquee Austin. Looking to join a group of fun, motivated, inspiring women? We've got you covered. Introducing the Women of Austin community. Whether you're a business owner looking for camaraderie, a working mom who wants to stay connected, or you're just looking to make new friends with an incredible group of local women, this community is for you. We have special in-person member-only events, an online platform and app to stay connected, a book club, and so much more. Join us and become a member today at womenofaustincommunity.com.
Thank you so much for being here today on the Women of Austin podcast. We're filming at 4203 Balcones Drive, a listing from Noah Levy and the agency. This palace has a heated and chilled pool with underwater speakers, a playscape out back with a trampoline and a fire pit. Plus, there's surround sound throughout the backyard. This home is an entertainer's dream. Plus, this house is Austin's first home to install a Tesla roof, a sustainable option to run your home while reducing your carbon footprint. You can find more information on this home and Noah and the agency in the show notes. Have you ever seen anyone come in that you felt was like being pressured and didn't want it?
I think that does happen.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've seen that a lot in my practice, but I do think sometimes there is pressure, and sometimes pressure from places that you might not expect. So, for example, sometimes there's some young women who may receive pressure from mom, even for something that, wouldn't be a procedure that people would be as judgmental about. So, for example, breast reduction. I think there are lots of young women who have very large breasts who would absolutely benefit from a breast reduction for relief of back pain, for finding clothes that fit better, for not being teased at school. But I think sometimes maybe they're not ready to make that leap yet. And so they get, brought into the office by very well-intentioned moms who are like, this will solve your problem. This will change your life, either because they've had it done before or they know someone who has. So I don't think it's always a mean-spirited thing. But, I think, what I tell the young girls who I see is I think that when you are at that stage, because usually we're seeing young girls who've already gone through puberty, so they're probably at least 16. I think this is a great opportunity for a lesson about having control over your body, and making those decisions and sort of taking ownership of your body and your health, because that's a lifelong lesson to me. And so if I ever sense in those situations that, the daughter isn't like mature enough yet to move forward with the surgery, or is hesitant and has kind of really come in just to please mom, then, we'll sort of talk through that and maybe put the brakes on surgery and talk about how, that's always an option in the future when she's ready.
And you've told me before, too, that one thing I love and respect about you is that you give people other options. It's, you sit there and you figure out what's right for them. You really get into it, and you want to make sure that they're getting what they actually want and understand and are comfortable. And I just love that you tell it like it is. And all these things that you're talking about with the conversations that you've had with your patients, it's just so nice and refreshing to hear that the care, like it shows. Did you think that when you were going into this, did you think about the patient-facing part and how you'd have to like really get good relationships with these people and get to know them and care? And
yeah, I think, I've always been sort of called to things that empower women. Initially, when I was in medical school, I actually didn't want to be a plastic surgeon. I wanted to be an OBGYN. And then for several reasons, I ended up choosing plastic surgery. And I think I always knew that doctor-patient relationship would be important. But I think that I've learned that it's maybe even more important than I realized. Yeah. And then the impact of having someone who's actually supporting that patient and not pushing their own agenda, I think that's really important to me. I mean, I think even as a patient, I've sometimes seen physicians before I was a physician and after who don't necessarily lay out all the options for me and give me choices. And I think like everything else in life, there are trade-offs to everything. And I think it's important to make the decisions that are right for you, your lifestyle, your values. And, that's not going to be the same for everybody. And so I think that is a very important sort of part of my practice for me, educating patients and empowering them to make the decisions that they feel are best for them, not me pushing my own personal aesthetic agenda.
Something that you taught me too that I really appreciate and value is that you, as a patient, you have a choice. You don't have to just go in and the first person you talk to because they gave you their time, and okay, I'm just going to do this. Like, it's okay to go shop around and find someone that you vibe with, that you want to be comfortable with. And for all kinds of doctors, even like your dentists.
Right.
It's just so, I don't know why I didn't know that or why I felt like whatever was in front of me, I had to choose. But I just wanted to say that. So if anyone else has, you could meet someone like Aisha,
but even then,
Great.
I encourage people to meet with other providers. I think you're right. I think sometimes as women, we may feel like some sort of obligation to someone.
That's what I'm getting at. Yes.
And you don't, I think that, I tell patients all the time, the real purpose of the consultation, isn't for me to sell them on surgery. It's for them to get the education. And I often see patients, I think a lot of patients these days will visit with multiple doctors. And so I encourage that. If someone meets with me and they say, oh, I had one or two other people who I wanted to meet with, but maybe I won't go now. I'm like, no, go. Because I think that there are lots of people who are well-trained and skilled and can do things. But I think and there are also lots of people who will present you with lots of options. But I think there's also a personality match too that's important. And, I'm not going to be the right plastic surgeon for everyone. And I think that it's important to sort of, see what multiple people have to offer, because they may have different techniques and they may also just have different personalities, some that are better suited for you.
Yeah. Techniques, personalities, all of that. Yeah, that's important. Well, thank you for laying it out like that. And again, like showing me and everyone who's listening, because as women, I feel like men, I don't, what is that? I just felt like I felt obligated to people to do things. Right. And it's just like, oh my gosh. Okay, now what else I wanted to ask you?
Okay.
We were talking about, I was telling people like, oh, like my friend, Dr. Aisha's coming on. She's a plastic surgeon. And mixed reviews, not about you, about the topic.
Sure.
So it's interesting because it's like, do you feel like you have to defend it?
Often, which also speaks to, that's so funny because as women, I don't know why we feel like we have to defend anything, but even, I feel like for a lot of women and even for a lot of my social circle, I feel like some women in particular feel like plastic surgery is a violation of their feminist principles. And so I do even sometimes feel that, like when I walk into a room, that I have to sort of give this disclaimer, like I'm a plastic surgeon, but I do things a different way, and because I do think there's this sort of kind of people paint plastic surgery with this superficial brush, and I think that that's unfortunate, and I think it's definitely a very misunderstood specialty. But yeah, I think sometimes in moments, feel too like I'm going to be judged because I'm, doing something that people feel like is not a service to the female community.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that it's like also my initial reaction was also, well, whenever I talk about it, it's like, well, the reconstruction and like after, like tell us about that work that you do. Not that we have to defend her work at all.
Right. No,
but
absolutely.
I also think that's fascinating. People don't talk about that side.
Right. No, people don't talk about that side a lot. And I think that, that is a side that's less known. Mm-hmm. And also that is sometimes, the side when I did more, reconstructive work, trauma reconstruction, breast cancer reconstruction, that, you'll say, well, hey, we're not just doing, you know, aesthetic, cosmetic things. But I think that, I clearly see the impact that even having aesthetic procedures can have on, you know, someone's confidence, self-esteem, perception of themselves, how they then move into the world as a more confident, empowered person. So, you know, I think, you know, it's just very short-sighted to discount even the aesthetic side. But I do think that there's all these things that plastic surgeons do, like, you know, congenital anomalies, cleft lip and palate, hand surgery that people don't realize, you know, are done by plastic surgeons.
Well, thank you for kind of breaking that down, and I just think that that's interesting, and to get your opinion. And I know you always say it like it is, so I appreciate that about you. We are almost out of time already, but is there anything that like you wanted to just follow up on a little bit more, or that you feel like we missed, or anything else?
No,
Last
you know,
thoughts?
I really want to encourage women to educate themselves, you know, with respect to their health care. And I think, you know, be unapologetic about the decisions that you make for your body. You know, I think often we feel a need to please people. Sometimes it's pleasing the doctor, sometimes it's pleasing someone else. But I think that it's important to sort of advocate for yourself and your health and make the decisions that you feel are right for you, regardless of what like your girlfriends or your parents or your kids or your significant other, you know, says. These are your personal decisions to make.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
It only
It's
took
always
a
so much
year
fun.
and a half or something. Oh my gosh.
It's okay. You're
did
busy.
it.
You're doing such amazing things. It's been happy to watch the arc of the podcast, and I'm just super excited to be back. And yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. To learn more about Dr. Aisha White, you can follow her on Instagram. The link is in the description of the episode. Also, be sure to check out the newly redesigned Women of Austin website at womenofaustin.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you next time on the Women of Austin podcast. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Women of Austin podcast. A new episode premieres twice a month right here on the Women of Austin channel. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notifications bell so you never miss an episode. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at women_of_Austin. My name is Mindy Hoffman. I hope you'll join us for our next episode of the Women of Austin podcast.